We're following multiple breaking stories related to the arrest of two associates of President Trump's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani. And we're just over an hour away from the start of CNN's groundbreaking town halls on equality in America. Due to his recent heart attack, the Democratic presidential candidate Bernie Sanders won't be joining 9 of his rivals in Los Angeles for tonight's town halls, but he is joining us now live from Vermont, his home state, to talk with CNN's chief medical correspondent, Dr. Sanjay Gupta. Sanjay, thanks so much for doing this.
You got it, Wolf. Thank you. And Senator Sanders, thank you. Thanks for having us in your home.
Thank you for visiting us in Burlington.
It's a house call. We're gonna talk about health, but I do want to talk about the news Wolf was just talking about. 2 associates of Rudy Giuliani, who's President Trump's personal lawyer, are arrested, indicted on campaign finance violations. What do you make of that?
Nothing about Trump ever shocks me. He is, I think, the most corrupt president in the modern history of America. I think he is a pathological liar who probably does not know the difference between truth and lies. I don't think he understands the Constitution of the United States, and certainly not the rule of law. He was born with a lot of money. He is arrogant. He thinks he can do whatever he wants to do. So, frankly, nothing shocks me.
One of the things you may know as well, Senator, these 2 gentlemen were found at Dulles Airport with one-way tickets out of the country. Pretty obvious what that means, right?
Yeah, of course it's obvious what it means.
They were trying to leave the country and not come back.
Yeah. Yes. All right, but again, I think the impeachment process is going to unveil so many things about this administration that the American people have to know. But bottom line is, this is so clearly a president unfit to hold the highest office in this country.
It's good to be here with you, Senator, and you look well. I want to talk specifically about what happened to you this past week. I want to clarify something. You said that you misspoke yesterday when talking about changing the nature of your campaign, dialing it back, not doing 4 rallies a day anymore. What did you mean? Did you misspeak, or are you going to dial it back?
Well, what I mean is probably next week I'm not going to do 4 rallies a day. I think I've done more rallies than any other candidate who's currently running for president of the United States. But I'm feeling great, and we're going to run a vigorous campaign. We're working on our schedule right now, which is going to take us to Iowa, to Nevada, probably back to New Hampshire. We're ready to go full blast.
You had a doctor's appointment, I believe, this week, and a follow-up appointment now back here in Vermont. What do they tell you?
Well, the reason I have been blessed with such good health throughout my entire life, to be honest with you, I've never gone to a cardiologist, I don't think, before this event. And I didn't have one here in Burlington. So we found a very good cardiologist. They did they looked at my heart. And what he says, the recovery is going very, very well. And we look forward to a full recovery. The echocardiogram was what they did.
Echocardiogram, which is an important test. An echocardiogram tells the function of the heart, how well the heart is beating, and can also give some indication of how severe the heart attack was. Right. What did they tell you?
Well, what they told me is that that we're on the road to a full recovery. There was some damage, but what happens is, within the next month, we'll see what happens. But so far, so very good.
There's a video of you actually swinging a baseball. That was swinging a bat.
Trying to keep up with my grandchildren. That is very exhausting, I must tell you.
It's almost a silly question to ask how you're feeling, because you said that you feel great.
Sanjay, the God's truth is that if you sitting there and you said, Bernie, did you have a heart attack last week? I said, what are you talking about? I feel great. Not an ounce of pain. I've been walking around a whole lot, playing ball with the kids. So, I feel very good, and I'm confident that we're going to be running a very, very vigorous campaign. But what I would say, and I don't know if you wanted to talk about this, is what I do kick myself a little bit about, and I hope people understand this and hear this, is that I should have paid more attention to some of the symptoms that were occurring. When you do 4 rallies a day and you run all over the country, you get tired. Everybody would get tired. But I was more tired than I usually have been. Had more trouble sleeping than ordinarily. Occasionally I'd be up there at the podium and I'd feel a little bit unsteady. And, you know, one time I was just lifting, literally holding the mic up to my arm, and my arm hurt.
Really?
Up to my mouth, and my arm hurt. And I should have paid more attention to those symptoms. So I hope that people learn from my mistake.
I mean, it's such an important point. The symptoms that you're describing may not be classic sort of symptoms, but left arm pain, some of this stuff were indicators. In retrospect, how long had you had symptoms, Senator?
I think probably it's hard to say, you know, because as I said, when you're running around the country and you're working hard, you're tired. Well, what else is new? You're going to be tired. I would say several weeks anyhow, and I should have paid more attention to that.
They tell you you're having a heart attack. This is when you go into the clinic. This is Tuesday night.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously that's frightening. It's the worst kind of
Shocking.
news.
Shocking.
Did you think that this could be fatal?
No, this is what I thought. First of all, we were driving, my staff and I was at an event, and I because I was speaking, and for the first time in my life, I said to somebody, "Give me a chair, I have to sit down," and I was sweating profusely. And normally, you know, we do selfies and we take questions and we have discussions. I was in no state to do that, and I felt badly to the people in the audience, but essentially I took a few very questions. I was very brief in my response, and I said to my staff, "Guys, we got to get out of here." And my first thought was, let's go to the back to the hotel. Then I started feeling
You felt the pain.
pain in my arm, and we went to what was an urgent care place in Las Vegas near the hotel, and the doctor there diagnosed. She made a diagnosis in about 3 seconds, and I went by ambulance to Desert Springs Hospital, and they had been warned that told that I was coming, and the procedure was done in about 45 minutes, I think.
So pretty quick. I mean, they
Very
were
quick.
concerned. I don't know, Senator, if you've ever seen this before. I went and took the liberty of actually finding a stent and a balloon. This is now, you have two of these now in one of the blood vessels in your heart. They use the balloon to sort of open it up, and there's the stent. Is that strange to look at?
It is. Well, it's not strange to look at. It's strange to know that it's in here somewhere.
It's in your body, but it's doing the job.
Look, you know, who knows? You know, there's some folks who think that I may be a little bit stronger because I'll have an artery that's not blocked. But what I've learned in the last week, more about cardiology than I ever wanted to know, is that my understanding is many hundreds of thousands of people a year have this procedure.
Yeah. How is this going to impact? How are you going to balance the campaign and the follow-up visits and the things that you need to do now to keep your heart healthy?
Well, we have a great doctor in D.C., and we've made a new doctor friend here in Burlington. And the folks in Las Vegas were great as well. But, you know, we're going to play it by ear. But I am feeling great and look forward to a very vigorous campaign. I'll be at the debate next week.
You'll be there. Yeah, we'll be looking for. You said it was. Someone said that Tuesday night you knew that you'd had a heart attack. You waited till Friday to talk about it. You said it was nonsense. This wasn't a lack of transparency. What was it though? Was the intent? We are going to disclose this at some point. We're just not now.
Of course we're going to. Of course, the people do have a right to know about the health of a senator and somebody's running for president of the United States. Full disclosure, and we will make at the appropriate time all of our medical records public for you, for anybody else who wants to see them. But you know, the first concern I think the people had is to understand what was going on before we're going to, you know, reveal information dribble by dribble. But no, we released and will release all the.
You think this is a fair conversation? Obviously, you're doing this interview with me. It's a fair conversation to be having about health, about age.
Of course it is.
All of that.
Absolutely. People, and by the way, it's a fair conversation. People have a right to know how I'm feeling. But if I may, at this moment, just say thank you to so many people all over the country who have expressed their concerns and written us in so many ways with their love and concern, and I appreciate that.
Well, so many people are glad to see that you're doing well. Senator, let me take a few minutes to ask you a few questions about the town hall tonight. The
Yeah, sure.
LBGTQ town hall. You can't be there, obviously.
Let me apologize to the Human Rights Organization for not being there, but I'm glad we have this opportunity.
Thank you. Yeah, you know, you have been fighting for gay rights since the early 1970s. There's this picture of you actually from '63, I believe, in Chicago, a civil rights protest at that point. Has civil rights and gay rights, have they always been part of the same thing?
Yes, they are. I think the picture you're referring to is I was a student at the University of Chicago. I was arrested for involvement in a demonstration against segregated housing in Chicago. I know I date myself a little bit, but I was there with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech for jobs and justice. And so the issue of justice, ending discrimination, is something that I've been involved in my whole life. When I was mayor in Burlington, we were involved in it as well.
When you read the civil rights language specifically of 64, it says prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. It doesn't say sexual orientation. How do you sort of reconcile that?
Well, I think, we can argue what the intent is. What I will tell you, Sanjay, is I am very worried about the right wing in this country now using the argument of freedom of religion to foster discrimination. We all believe in freedom of religion. We're all proud Americans. Everybody has the right to practice their own religion. But we cannot now use the argument that it is my religious belief that if you're gay, I will not sell you a cake. Or I will, if you're black, it is my religious belief you can't come into my store if you're Jewish or whatever. We've gone way, way beyond that. And it worries me very much that there is a strong movement trying to bring, under the guise of freedom of religion, racism and sexism and homophobia back into this.
There's two arguments that are being heard in front of the Supreme Court this week, specifically about discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation.
Right.
If the Supreme Court doesn't rule in favor of the plaintiffs here, what could you do if you were President of the United States to offer those protections?
Everything that's humanly possible. You think back on the history of our country from first settlers coming here and the terrible things they did to Native Americans. We think about the atrocity of slavery. We think about the assaults on so many Asian expulsion acts. Asians were thrown out of the country. The anti-Semitism, anti-Irish sentiment, anti-Italian sentiment. We've been through it all. But what we should be proud of as a nation, having gone through all of that we have put so much of that behind us. Does racism exist now? Of course it does. But we have come a long, long way. We elected an African American as president of the United States, something that people 30 years ago never would have dreamed was possible. And it upsets me very much that Trump and some of his allies are trying to roll back the clock and take us to a place that we have gone far beyond.
And President Obama, as you talked about, signed an executive order prohibiting discrimination against federal workers. Right. But what would you do specifically, though, as president, to offer protections to the population?
Well, we would pass federal legislation that makes it clear, absolutely clear, that it is illegal to prohibit, to have discrimination against anybody because of their sexual orientation. That's clear. And it would be a very broad and sweeping legislation at work, in any other capacity of life.
Some of these things, when we talk about, they're all sort of based on this idea as well that it's still likely to be a Republican Senate. How does this work then? How do you get something like that through a Republican Senate?
I think, interestingly enough, while you have a small group of right-wing folks who want to push this discriminatory agenda, the climate has changed so much in this country. We're sitting in Vermont now. Vermont has been a leader in gay rights. In fact, we were the first state to pass what was then called civil unions legislation, which was the precursor to gay marriage. And I can remember 25 years ago, 30 years ago, whatever, marching in parades where people were really, really upset about this concept. It's all gone. The younger generation, if you tell somebody, what's your view on gay marriage, and they're 20 years of age, you know what? They don't even know what you're talking about. They really don't. Their grandparents may, and their grandparents may be concerned, but the world has changed very radically and in a good way. So my administration will do everything humanly possible to fight homophobia, involving the gay community in that deliberation as to how we go forward, fighting racism, sexism, and the religious bigotry, by the way, that the Trump administration is fostering on us.
Some of it is just so atrocious. According to HRC, 19 transgender people were killed this year.
Sick.
American Medical Association calls it an epidemic. Yeah. When we're talking about protections, we're talking about life and death situations. What about as president, what could you do to protect transgender population?
Well, first of all, we will make it clear that every transgender murder will be investigated by the Department of Justice as a severe hate crime. We will not tolerate that type of behavior. And I think the good news is that the American people understand that. The American people want us to move away from this kind of vulgar, disgusting discrimination into a society where we treat people as human beings, no matter what the color of their skin, what their sexual orientation, whether they're transgender, whatever it may be. That is the goal that we have got to fight for. And we have come a long way, and it breaks my heart to see a president who is taking us in exactly the direction that we have overcome, that we have largely overcome.
Senator Sanders, I just want to ask again about your health. What are you doing differently now? There's new medications, I imagine. Are you taking care of yourself differently in some way? Diet? Anything?
I am. Look, I won't tell you that I have been the worst eater in the world, but I surely was not the best. Did my best to stay away from junk food and so forth and so on. But we're going to do better. We're going to do better with food.
During this whole process, at any point from last Tuesday, 9 days now, was there any point when you said, you know what, I think the best course of action may be to drop out?
No, because, I don't know how, again, when you hear the word heart attack, you're thinking of somebody lying on the ground in terrible pain. Wasn't the case. Okay, the day I woke up after the procedure, no pain, zero pain. No pain right now. I feel really good. So, my feeling was, once I assessed the situation and learned what happened, that given that my whole life struggle, I don't mean to be, overly dramatic here, but I have spent my entire life trying to fight for justice, not only against homophobia, but for workers' rights, to create an environment that is not destroying our water and our air, to deal with climate change, all of those issues. And we have had significant success in kind of transforming the dialogue in America. And many of the issues that I talked about 4 years ago are now, that were considered radical then, are now kind of mainstream today. Many of my Democratic opponents are saying today what I said 4 years ago. So we've struggled really hard to get to where we are right now, bring millions of people together in the fight for justice. And I'm not a quitter. And, I had, adversity, no question about it. I do not want anybody to have a heart attack, not a good thing. But you know what? There are a lot of people watching this show right now who are dealing with adversity. Unlike me, they could not afford to get the health care that I got. I got really good quality health care. We haven't gotten the bill yet, but I have, strong private insurance. I have Medicare. I will, sure, my wife and I will be paying money out of pocket. We can afford to do that. But what happens to somebody who was 63 and they felt the same pains that I felt? And they would be thinking, I'm feeling pretty crappy, but if I go into the doctor, if I go into the hospital and I run up a bill of thousands of dollars, how am I going to pay for that? All right? Am I going to go bankrupt? Am I going to be able to put food on the table for my kids? So, one of the things that did occur to me, it's no great secret, I think, to any American, that I believe that healthcare is a human right, that 50 miles away from here in Canada, if you're in the hospital for 3 months dealing with cancer, whatever else you're dealing with, you leave that hospital without paying a nickel because it is publicly financed. But I think this incident made me really think on a personal level what happens to people who don't have decent health insurance.
Well, I think that, as you said before, I think this incident probably sounds like it's reinforced.
Exactly right word.
Senator Sanders, we're out of time. Thank you very much. I'm glad you're doing well.
Good. Hey, Sanjay, thanks
you
so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Wolf, back to you.
Sanjay, thanks so much. We're glad he's doing well as well. And thank you very much. A very important and very interesting interview indeed. We're going to discuss that